Okay, good morning. Thank you all for coming. We'd like to announce a drive that is being begun here with the filing of a bill later this week. Arizona is joining at least 8 other states for the time being in an effort to call an amendment convention for the purposes of amending the U.S. Constitution to limit the federal debt level. The current federal debt level is unsustainable. From prior levels of 30 to 40% of gross domestic product, the federal debt level has now gone over 100% of our gross domestic product. A level not sustained since World War II, when we had great demands in terms of defense spending. The federal debt is now over $14 trillion. This amendment seeks to limit that level by requiring any increase in the federal debt ceiling to be approved by a majority of the states. This is not a conservative or liberal measure. This is not a Democrat or Republican measure. This is a measure of fiscal responsibility. All we're saying, Democrats, Republicans, conservative liberals across the country, all we're saying is, Congress, Mr. President, if you want to raise the federal debt ceiling, get our permission. Or stay within your limits and either cut spending or increase taxes or do a combination of the two. But don't raise the debt level, don't do neither, and just print more money and kick the debt to our grandchildren. The level of debt has become unsustainable. We have present here today a representative from the Goldwater Institute who can answer some of the technical questions. But before that, I would like to have Senator Chuck Gray, who is also one of the leaders of this movement in Arizona, also address the media. Senator.
Well, good morning. First of all, I'm former Senator Chuck Gray, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update of how this came to be. About a year ago, 2 gentlemen came to my office. Their names are Glenn Hughes and James Booth, and they represent the organization named RestoringFreedom.org. And they came to me with this idea about an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that would require approval from the majority of the states for Congress or Washington to increase the debt. And that idea was so intriguing to me and so compelling that I realized that it could save this nation literally from the financial ruin where we're headed currently. So I took that idea to the Goldwater Institute and I spoke with them and presented that, and after they did the research that they needed, they came back with the opinion, very excitedly I might add, that this could very well do away with the federal debt over time. If you think about the national debt, it is based upon the good faith and credit of the American people. And so it is up to the American people through their legislatures to put a check and a balance on what Congress has done. No longer can Congress just simply be their own banker. We need to cut up that credit card and have a co-signer, if you will, of the states, because it is the American people that are backing up that good faith and credit, and it's about time that we spoke our voice so that we could make sure that if that debt is necessary, then we can approve it. In times of national emergency or crisis or war, the American people have always stood ready to help those in need. And this would be no different. And so this would just require Congress to come to the states and ask for that permission to raise the debt, and the American people through their legislatures would quickly be able to respond in those times of emergency and be able to provide that needed relief. And that's what the name of this amendment is. It's a National Debt Relief Amendment, and it's for the purpose of relieving this nation of this terrible debt. So I'm going to turn the time over now to Nick Duranis of the Goldwater Institute.
Thank you. My name is Nick Duranis. I'm the director of the Center for Constitutional Government at the Goldwater Institute. I want to emphasize that the National Debt Relief Amendment is the single most powerful amendment idea that has come through the doors at the Goldwater Institute. It is only 18 words, and the idea is simple. A majority of state legislatures must approve any increase in the federal debt. It is flexible enough to accommodate any actual genuine need for debt, and it also guarantees transparency and accountability in the elected bodies that are closest to the people. And since the people are ultimately on the hook for this excessive federal debt, that is entirely appropriate. One of the great things about the Constitution is that the founders gave the states a parallel process to amend the Constitution in Article 5, the same power that Congress has, and that is what this process is. It will take 34 states to have Congress call an amendments convention, and already 8 states are lining up behind this idea. It is powerful, it is simple, and it will happen. Thank you.
The only time the national debt ceiling on the national debt itself has ever risen above 100% of gross domestic product, the output of our citizens, is during World War II, which was an unusual time that demanded massive mobilization against a global enemy.
I actually agree with Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the late 1790s that he wished that there was just one more amendment to the Constitution, something that would enable the controlling of the federal government's ability to generate debt. I think it is a good structural change to put a cosigner in the states on any level of federal debt, and I think it's flexible enough when you have a majority of state legislatures involved that you can handle any level of debt.
Traditionally, this country has maintained debt from day one. The 30 to 40% level, while not ideal, did not threaten our economy, our status in the world, the way the current over 100% of GDP federal debt does.
At this level of debt, our future and our children's future is threatened.
I just began circulating it yesterday. I'm pleased to say that I already have 29 co-sponsors, so I'm just at this point one vote away from passage among people who are sponsoring it. And I'm sure some individuals who didn't want to sponsor will vote for it, and they've said that. So in the House, I believe there'll be enough votes to easily pass this.
One of the problems that we've encountered in our republic is that a critical voice of an elected body that's closer to the people than Washington, D.C. has been excluded from Washington, and that is the voice of state legislatures. Folks like Representative Kavanaugh, who are close to the people they represent and have to encounter them every day, they're no longer represented in Washington, D.C. And what one of the great things about this amendment idea is it gives a voice back to the state legislatures of this country that no longer exists. The founders designed our Constitution with a role for state legislatures in checking and balancing the federal government. They don't have that role any longer because of the way that the federal government has grown and the way that the 17th Amendment was ratified. And now we can give back some of that original balance of power to ensure that the federal government is checked and balanced, not to take away the federal government's power, but to ensure that it acts in a moderate fashion.
I just wanted to remind all of you of one important thing. When Congress spends or raises the debt limit, there's a discussion at the national capital, but we don't have that discussion about where that money is going to be used and how it's going to be used in a way that is very helpful to the American people. And so now, this amendment, once it's ratified by the 38 states, will ensure that we have national discussions in every state capital every time the federal government wants to raise the national debt. In other words, the American people will be, through their legislatures, be able to open up that curtain and find out where they're going to spend the money, why they're going to spend the money, and we will have a debate in 50 states across this nation. Talk about a transparency that's never occurred before about how we are spending our money, how we are using our American good faith and credit. And I think that that is one of the most important things that will come out of this, is the transparency of how our money is being spent at the national level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.